Welcome again, YouTube. This is Max1 Chase 1. This video is going to be on the transitioning concept of going from 4 carburetors of over 40 years ago to 1 carburetor on the 84 through 87 Honda Goldwings. As you can see, my carburetors have been removed from my bike. And let's take a look at the bike so you can kind of see when you want to do this conversion. I'm going to show you what your bike should look like and what parts you should have standing by waiting for the conversion to start. Okay, YouTube, now we're here on the left side of my bike to let you know that this is my bike going for another conversion. There's the F4B. Alright, now notice right here on the left side of the bike, the first thing you notice that there's a towel here, so make sure you get a towel to cover up your intake so nothing falls down inside your intakes that would damage your valves. That goes directly into the valves that go directly into the cylinder, so cover those up. Also too, with the spark plugs, I got those up and out of the way. But for also too, if you have these type of boots that would kind of keep the spark plugs separated for number 2 and number 4, keep this on here, because it's one video where one guy crossed these up and the bike just wouldn't start for some reason. But these boots here will kind of help keep you secure to know that when you put them back on, they're in the right order. Alright, so the same thing, just put them up and out of the way. Your steering linkage. Your steering linkage, here is the 2 parts of what the steering linkage. This one is when you pull the throttle, you want to go with a higher RPM, you pull that, and this pulls the linkage on the carburetor from long ago. It will pull the linkage around and that would accelerate. The one on the bottom is the return, so the spring will push it back out so that it would decrease the RPMs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the linkage from right here, unscrew this screw here, and just slip this nut and bolt thing right out of here. And instead of me going all the way back up to the handlebars to disconnect those 2 cables up there, I'm just gonna take this one right here, pull it out of the way, maybe along the frame somewhere where it can still engage and disengage freely on its own. But I'm not gonna go through the headache of trying to disconnect that with 40-year-old plastic and not break something. But as long as it's out of the way, it's not hampering anything, I'm gonna leave it like it is. Here's your choke cable. Same thing with the choke cable. With the new concept or the new conversion, you have an electric choke, so you don't have to worry about the manual choke anymore. But what I'm gonna do with this also too, I'm gonna take this, stick it up right along the side, and zip tie it in, and hope I never have to touch it again. Also too, you have free access now for your fuel filter. If you ever had to change your fuel filter, here it is right here in this location, or either if it's back in the old position, you still have easy access to get to it from the old position. But I like it here so I can kind of keep an eye on it and see if it's dirty or whatever. I can get a quick glance at it. Now you know that when I did the pulling of the reed control valve, I use these as plugs so I can continue to have them here. And there they are for number 2 and number 4. So I'm not going to change too much of the concept of removing those out of the original position that they're in. Let them continue to do the job and seal up things like they are already doing. Your fuel petcock is here. Like I said, same thing. I do have my fuel off, so and my alternator here, like I said, the same thing. The alternator is still running great. Right now it's not doing anything because I'm waiting on this conversion to get done on the carburetors. But still, look at all the space that you're gonna have with the intakes coming out to here and to here. All of this room here is open for you to have airflow, check your fuel filter, help the cooling of the engine, because now the heat can come up and just vent off. I think this concept, this conversion is going to be pretty well good for the bike and for the operation of it. Let's go around to the other side and let's take a look at the other side, the right side. Now over here on the right side, you can kind of see again, I have a towel covering up my intakes so nothing gets inside the intakes. There are the control valve plugs, devices or the hoses. They're still in place where I did it once before. Your fuel pump, you don't have to disengage your fuel pump. All you have to do is disengage the fuel pump going from here to the old carburetors where they split off to go to the one on the left and the one on the right. So you don't have to move and touch your fuel pump. Again, this is what everyone's bike should look like, and all you have to do now is just wait for the manifold, and you just match that up with your intakes. And with my intakes, I have them right here. I've cleaned them, and I'm just waiting for the manifold to arrive so I can match them up with the manifold and install the carburetor. It seems like it's quick and easy, and so far I can kind of see that it is going to be quick and easy. Also here on the left side, you know when I talked about the vacuum here coming from the computer, I think it is the ICM, I believe it is. Alright, but you see that vacuum line coming from out of there? You do have a vacuum line. I'm thinking that this vacuum line is going to go to the back of the one carburetor. So just like I said before, when you take your carburetors out with the old-fashioned way, disconnect it from here, let it stay hooked up to the carburetors like I have it on my old set, and replace it back to here when you're ready to put the carburetors back in. So this is a vacuum line that you may have to have hooked up on the one carburetor that will go in the back, or either in the back or the front. I forgot to add that. Now for up here on the top, this canister, this PVC type format type thing, I don't see any use for it. It does expel fumes, I guess, whatever that comes from out of this tube here. I'm going to try not to disconnect it if I don't have to, but I'm going to do some research to find out how I can install it to put it back in the new one carburetor conversion to see if it's really relevant to have it or not have it. This might have been good for use with the 4 carburetors because of emission and warm-up, because the choke was a manual choke, not an automatic choke. If you notice when you run it, this goes right into the air box. So let me do some research. If you know what's the purpose of this and does it serve a purpose now with the one carburetor system, let me know, drop me a note. Now with the number 4 cylinder that had this vacuum line here, since the one carburetor version don't have a line that's going to it, I think what I'm going to do is just go and buy me a plug and put a plug here, because there's nothing that's coming from the one carburetor to have a need to do anything for the number 4 carburetor. Again, if you understand a reason for it, or there's a good method to go with the plugging it, let me know. Thanks. Okay, let's take a look at the EMPI 34 PICT-3 carburetor, the single carb. Some of the parts that come along with this carburetor: one, you get a paper gasket, and you get the 2 studs. Here's one here and the other here, but you do not get the nut, because they're assuming that you're using this for a Volkswagen, so you would normally already have these. So for the Goldwing people who are doing the conversion, if you don't have these nuts, you have to go and buy them. Now what I did to buy those, I went down to my home improvement store, which is Lowe's, and Hillman in their specialty locker. They have these bolts. It's a class 8. It's a M8-1.25. I bought a whole little small bag. I think it was about like $3. And they're from out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Now I did send a little note to the seller of this carburetor, and I told him, I said, with people doing this conversion with the Honda Goldwings, it's an added business that he could get involved with. He can contact the company and work a deal with them to sell you the nuts at a volume price, so you can add it in with the kit. Now also too, what comes along with it, they have a 130 main jet, and they have a 60 idle jet. So that's good that they did give you these 2 extra jets, just in case that the fuel octane is a little bit different from the use of a German carburetor here in America, where our octane goes from 87 to 91, I believe. So also too, what equipment you might need, I like to have these 3 different types of screwdrivers available. Have the little small one that fits directly into here. This larger one fits directly good into here, and the other one is going to fit on the other side. That goes for here. So 3 types of screwdrivers would be good to have. 3 different sizes. Also too, a feeler gauge set. You can buy these at your auto parts store, Walmart. I've had this set for years. It was still in the package. I never had a need for it, but with this conversion, it's good to go ahead and get one. It's come with feeler gauges in different meter settings, from 0.006 up to other numbers I don't know them right offhand. And then you got other feeler gauges for dealing with valve settings and stuff like that. You got 2 gauges here for spark plug gaps. And then also too, it's got the little tool so you can adjust the spark plug. I lost my spark plug gauge, and here I had this sitting there in the garage, and then they know it, and been sitting in there for years. Alright, let me turn this back around to here. Now also too, just to make sure that you know that these nuts do fit, screws in on both sides, even though the short side is going to screw into the carburetor here, and the long side is the one that you're going to screw this nut to. So you can kind of see that it does fit in there at a nice even thread. It's a millimeter, so it's a German product, so you're dealing with the metric system. Alright, get this line back up again. We talk about certain things. Let's take a look at some of the components of the EMPI 34 PICT3 carburetor. This screw right here is called the bypass screw. This one is your volume control screw. This screw is your fast idle adjusting screw. And this device here is called your idle cutoff solenoid. Now do not mix this screw up with this screw. Now you want to see you got a fast idle. Notice that it's hooked up to the butterfly. As I pull this throttle linkage back, now watch it drop down, and the choke will engage a little bit more. So when you engage the choke, it's going to run a little faster. And the same thing, you can go to the next one. So don't think that you're using this screw to adjust the idle. Now how you adjust the idle, you adjust it with the bypass screw. Now this little screw up on the bottom, which is the volume control screw, this controls the air. If you screw it clockwise, it cuts off the air and it runs with the normal fuel flow. That means less air is going in, so it's going to run a little richer. If you run it a little leaner, do a counterclockwise turn and it'll run a little leaner. So you have to listen to the motor to make sure that it's running how you want it to run. Now for doing your initial settings of this carburetor, like I said, with the volume control screw, which is this small screw here on the bottom, screw it all the way in till it bottoms out. Again, when you screw it in, don't screw it till you torque it. Just when you feel it, it bottoms out at the bottom. And the initial setting for that is to unscrew it counterclockwise 2.5 turns. Again, this is just your initial setting, just to kind of get it to accept the fuel and the air setting that you've given it, and you make your running adjustments according to your engine, what's the requirement for it, and how it runs. Now for adjusting the bypass, which is the larger screw, same thing, screw that one in. Now when you screw this one, push in on it a little bit, and you can kind of feel it's a little bit relaxing on the screw when you push in on it just a little bit, and you can screw it in. Now same thing, screw that one in until it bottoms out, and for the initial setting on this one, unscrew it counterclockwise 2 turns. Again, bottom 2.5, top one 2 turns. Do your initial setting before you decide to put it on the bike so you can kind of get it to run and start, and you can go from there. Also, I forgot to mention, here's your fuel inlet. I've noticed that the fuel inlet that's on my bike now is the same fitting. It's got a little snug to it, so it fits onto here just as well as it did on the full carburetor system. Now for your fast idle adjustment, you have to make one adjustment on this, and after that you don't have to make any other adjustments to this screw whatsoever, unless it deals with the climate that you're in or the altitude. Then you might have to adjust it then. But how they say for you to make this adjustment is to turn the butterflies to the last opening on this little cog adjuster here. Take your .003 feeler gauge, you got to hold one with one hand and one in the other, so I'm trying to do it. Oh, come on. Put the feeler gauge in between there, just like that, and you should adjust the screw till you can feel a little bit of a tug, just a little bit of a drag in between it on that bottom setting. Alright, and if you have that little bit of drag to drag it out of there, then that's the setting for it. Once you set that at that bottom setting there, take your small screwdriver, go from the back, turn one complete turn inward, and that is the final setting that you have to do for the fast idle screw. Alright, let's take a look at the other side of the carburetor. Here we have the electric choke plug that you have to connect this to 12 volt current. You can run an inline fuse in between here in the fuse box, as long as it gets 12 volt current here, and that's a push pin. Here's your idle jet. If you have to replace your idle jet with a higher one, this one's a 55. The one that came with the kit is a 60. So you can just unscrew this with a screwdriver, unscrew it, screw in the new jet. Here is your accelerator pump, and it's how you adjust this is that if you got the engine running, you look down in the carburetor, and as you accelerate, you should see fuel spray into the carburetor. And if you don't, then you have some hesitation. You have a accelerator pump adjustment screw here. Same thing, this is where this other screwdriver here comes in handy. It's not too wide, not too small, fits right in here. As you loosen this screw here, slide this bracket upward until it gets to that right point where the adjustment is matching the accelerator pump and the spray inside the carburetor. Now to do the other jet, let's rotate this back around. The main jet, either you can take the cap off and you can see it down in there, it goes across the bottom here. But if you can do it without it, you keep having to take the carburetor off, you can take the cap off. On there, you might have to replace a gasket here. But you take this screw off here, you got to use a flat tip screwdriver, maybe this size screwdriver you might need. Unscrew it. You might have to wind up and use a small pick or something to get it to drag it out, because it goes in about, I'd say about this far. So just pick it out and then take your 130 jet and screw it in there, and then same thing, do it just like we determined on the other one. It's 2, how many turns did I say? The bypass when it's 2 turns out. All right. So okay, YouTube, again, going around one more time. Here is your vacuum line. I'm going to find out how does this vacuum line attach to the one that goes to the computer. Either I can use it, or either I might have to plug it. Like just one of those push plugs you put on it. But if it don't require it, I'm going to plug it. And if it needs it all the way up to the one to the computer, then I will attach it to that. Okay, YouTube, that's pretty much the basic part of just getting this carburetor on there and getting it to run. Also too with the studs, this is where the studs go in, with the short end going up into the threaded. This is threaded, and then the long end is where it goes into the manifold. I can see promises with this one carburetor. It's a little bit, like I say, it's I already see the advantage. 1 is cheaper, 2 is easier to install, 3 easier to adjust. You only got 1 or 2 screws instead of 4 to 6 when you're dealing with the 4 carburetor system. It's just like a car carburetor. It goes, air goes in and it distributes wherever what cylinder is asking for the draw. So I think that this is going to be a promising conversion for the 84 through 87 Goldwings. And now I'm just waiting on the manifold to arrive. And again, it's coming from Lithuania, so it's got to go through the customs and all that stuff. So I can wait for it. There's some other stuff I need to do preparations for, and by that time I'll add to this and we can go from there. Okay, YouTube, the manifold has arrived, and what I did so far, you have to make sure that you do have the right manifold. But what the people in Lithuania did send me the first time was for a GL 1000 and 1100, which the pipes here, they don't have a curve down, they just come straight out. But after I contacted eBay and the seller in Lithuania, they wanted me to just send a photo to make sure that I did have the wrong one, and they immediately corrected it and sent me my 1200 manifold. Now with the manifold, like I say, notice that I used the original intake gaskets that go around it between the intake and the intake that go into the engine. They fit pretty good. They fit pretty tight, so you just got to have patience with it to make them fit. I'm gonna show you what I did to what I had to do to make them fit. Now also too, I made a little etch on the outside of which intake manifold piece went for each cylinder. Like for here, I did a little small scratch of a little number 4 here. So make sure that you have the number 4 cylinder on the rear left, and then same thing, number 2, number 1, and number 3. Even though they don't have the vacuum line for it, or the timing vacuum, but still, like I say, if you put them in order like you had them on the bike, maybe these hose clamps or hose fittings would fit a whole lot better. Now with the intake pieces, now what I had to do with my intakes, you know that little ridge line that's right here on the inside. Now what I had to do was to take my Dremel tool. Like I said, if you don't have a Dremel tool, that'd be good to get one because they work real nice, especially the one that's got the sandpaper piece to it. And you know that little ridge that's right on the inside of here, you might have to grind that. I grind mine down till it's even and flat all the way around. Try not to grind too much, because if you grind too much, then you're gonna have a leak. But just grind a little bit, feel it, grind a little bit and feel it. Now also too, once you do that, make sure you take some carburetor cleaner. Make sure you spray out all in between here to make sure everything is out of the intake, because that plastic, once you stick it on there, it's gonna get sucked into the cylinder, and you don't want plastic inside the cylinder because it's gonna melt and then you got a problem. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and attach these last 2 intake pieces on here, and we'll probably be ready to go ahead and put the intake on the bike. Let me see if you can see that right here. What is that, a number? That's a number 1. See, I etched a little number 1 on it. So I'm gonna take this number 1 and add it to that one right there. Alright, be back in a moment. Now when you put in these intakes on, again, they're gonna be a bear to put them on, so you just have to have some patience on it. You have to put it in one little side of the end in, and then you got to turn it and wiggle it back and forth till you get it in. But once you get them in, there's only a little bit of distance between there and here where the clamp is, because it's a ridge line right here. So that pipe is going in all the way to right here. So what you have to do once you get one on, make sure you tighten that clamp up right here, because they will slip out, and they are, again, like I said, they are bad to get them on. Also too, once you get them all on, try to keep them kind of loose, so you can kind of, well, you got to loosen them up so you can kind of get this little flat surface. You notice I have it on this food table that we use. That way the manifold on the bike, it's a flat surface, so you get them as close to flat as you can. I'd say a little issue here. I hope that don't have too much of an issue when I get ready to put it on the bike. So now we're here at this point where I'm ready to wind up and put it on the motorcycle and see how everything fits. Now here we are with the intake just sitting on the bike. What I'm going to do is, what I recommend is for your screws here is to screw them and then leave them in a configuration so you can get to them in this fashion instead of this fashion. Same thing, I'll bring this one and slide it on over so I can get it from the top. Now what I'm going to do now is do each one and level it off so I can get one bolt, or either one bolt in each one, so I can get them started. And once I get them started, I'm going to leave it loose, so as I tighten up on it, when I get them all in, I'm going to tighten up one at a time so that they will turn or whatever they need to go flat with the intake. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back with you. So that's what I'm gonna do. Now, like I said earlier, loosen up these screws here, your band screws here, and bring them to the inside, because you can work with a screwdriver straight up and down than you can here. Because if you notice how this screw goes, if it goes around, it's in the way of the alternator or either some other piece of equipment if you haven't did the alternator conversion. But I can always work on it from here to there. Easy to get it on, easy to get it off. And then again, like I said before, put one screw in here, one screw in there, and just hand tighten it all the way down, and then try to get the other screw and then the other screw. Now it is a little bit of flex in the coupling between the boot and the intake, so you got a little bit of flex but not too much. And then once you get this other screw in and this screw in, make sure you tighten these down right here, because if you don't tighten them down and they slip off, start it all over again. You got to take it off to get this back on the intake. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and I've tightened these down, these intake bolts down, and I've tightened these down so they'll stay in place. And as you can kind of see, they are sitting flush and flat, but except for that one, I got to tighten that one down a little bit more. But for this one, it is tight and flush. I do have to loosen that back up and tighten that back down, because I was so glad to get a bolt in it, because it was a little bit of flex I had to work with to get that in there. So that's how you're gonna have to do it. Just be careful and take your time with it. Don't cross thread nothing. Just deal with the flex. Now what I had to deal with the flex too, I took a crescent wrench, pressed it in between there, and pushed back on it, and that worked with the flex. Alright. Now I did loosen up that clamp a little bit, and now that has closed that gap, because I worked it with the flex to try to work that over so it'll turn a little bit to flatten out here. So now it is flat and flush and torqued down. And now I'm gonna go back and retighten this so it doesn't slip off anymore, because like I said, the same thing, get these onto those intakes, they are a beast. And over here on the right side, everything's flat and flush, torqued down. For number 3 and number 1, same thing, everything's flat and flush, torqued down. Now with these screws here, I got this one facing to the rear because of the excess I have for here. Could have did it here, but since I already had it on, I didn't make the alignment to make sure that I could do it to here. But if you want to do it as long as it's facing to the rear, I can get it from this direction. Now I did take the number 3, and that is on the inside going up and down. So here is the intake. It's already installed. The intake comes to here where the carburetor was set, and here's the place where the linkage for the throttle will go. So I'm gonna go in now and back to the carburetor, which some people would follow this same procedure. After you got the intake in, go back into the carburetor and add the bolts to the carburetor, and then we'll come back and we'll install the carburetor to the manifold. Now I have installed the studs on the carburetor. Same thing, I use these type of nuts instead of the ones that had the little flange on the bottom that's got the little grippers on the bottom. I'm gonna use these for right now, along with a lock washer, because I can always upgrade this with just one bolt at a time and get the ones that's got the little gripper on it if I want to take the lock washer off. And also too, we've got the gasket. So this is all you need to do to wind up, and now just drop this on the motorcycle and torque it down. Bit of a helpful hint, when installing the carburetor on the 1200, it's a little bit easier than for the 1000s and 1100s. This bolt here is right in between these manifold intakes, and the one on this side is in between 2 and 1. It can go straight up. Now the helpful tint on that couple tip on that is that when you're trying to get that front bolt, put your towel or something down, because I will put money on it, you're gonna drop that screw in that washer the first time around, and then that way the towel doesn't let it go and wiggle down into some place where you can say, John Brandon, I got to get that out of there because I'm gonna hear it rattling or it's gonna get into something. All right, so put yourself a towel down so it you can automatically pick it right back up and try again. Okay, before installing your carburetor on your manifold, I recommend doing the wiring while it's off, because it's a little bit of a tight fit once you get down in there. I did a pre-position fit just to kind of see where it's located, and the fuel cutoff was a little bit tight with this section here. It was hard to get to it because you go in between this cord and this beam here. So I recommend doing the wiring first while it's off the manifold. Also, when you're dealing with the wiring, make sure you have your key in the off position, because you're dealing with a positive terminal and you're hooking things up hot. If you want to disconnect the battery, you can do that too. But I just didn't want to say, ensure that you have the key in the off position. Let's take a look at the fuse box. You can see the fuse box got the different types of fuses in a row. And then you notice down on the bottom you have a positive and a negative. So let's take a look at the fuse box. There, your same fuses in a row, and determine which one positive. The one on the right is positive and the one on the left is negative. Notice that I have red and black wire. Now, the wire that I used is a 12 gauge wire. I wanted to make sure I had a heavy enough wire. I put an inline fuse in here, starting off with a 15 amp fuse. Came through the back end of that fuse, went into a joiner so I can join the fuel cutoff and the choke all on the same fuse. So if one do burn out, I know it's either a fuse, it's nothing mechanical, so I just changed the fuse out of that inline fuse and hope things work right after that. Now for my negative terminal, the black wire ran the wire. I was going to wind up and go to the bottom of the manifold, but I didn't have a eye loop pin that was big enough to do that. So what I did is I just unscrewed the top of the carburetor here and right into there. Also too, with your carburetors, make sure you re-torque all the bolts, the screws, because all of these were loose. Look like they just put them on there hand tight, and that was it. Alright, so now I'm ready to wind up and put this on the bike and take it out there in the yard and do a startup. Oh, also too, know that you're dealing with a 1200, and by this carburetor is for a Volkswagen with a 1600. Now what I did with my adjustment screws, I went all the way in, came in a half a turn out with this, and a half a turn out with the small one. And then once I get it to start and run, I will adjust it from there. I didn't want it to wind up and be over flooding with gas, because it's trying to supply the gas supply for a 1600, not a 1200. Now, as I have the carburetor sitting flat on top of the manifold, I'm gonna go ahead and attach the bolts, and that way it'll be secured and won't move around when I begin to want to try to attach the gas line to push it on to the gas fitting. Well, I took it out here in the middle of the yard just in case I had a fire or anything, but for the first few minutes it's gonna run some kind of turbo. You just got to fool with the jets a little bit, but I think you got to burn off something that's inside the carburetors, and then after that it's settled down. But I do have a little bit of a jump in the idle between 1000 and 1200. I can deal with that. but the acceleration and the hesitation, they don't have it. Yeah. So I think I'm going to let it run a little bit, but other than that, still going to tinker with it and find out how I can tune it in just a little bit more. Again, YouTube, I think that this is a good choice to go with. It's easy to deal with, easy to set up, easy to install. I don't see any bad issues with it so far. If I had to take anything off, it's quick and easy. So I'm going to go ahead and call this one a wrap. And I'm going to fine tune this more and more as I tinker around with it. But to install it and to hear it run, I'm a happy camper. I'd rather deal with one carburetor than to deal with 4. And for those who is thinking about whether doing this or not, I highly recommend you do it because of the ease of operation and then the ease of service on it. Again, if you like this video, like it, share it, leave me a few comments. If it's something else I need to adjust, leave me a note, let me know. Again, this is Max 1, Chase 1, maxing one thing out, chasing another one.